Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 10,027, written by Vegas V. The glitchiest snow day ever. This happened when I was in high school many years ago. I was dreaming that my aunt was calling to tell me there was no school due to snow. My dream was interrupted by me being awoken by the phone actually ringing. I leaned over the bed and picked up the phone. It was my aunt, who told me she just saw that my school had canceled class for the day due to snow. My aunt calling the house wasn't a usual occurrence in the early morning, and I can't ever recall her calling to tell us there was a snow day before. I got up and realized just how odd the whole thing was, and walked out to the kitchen to tell my mom about what just happened. My mom was unloading the dishwasher and piling pots and pans on the counter so she could take them across the kitchen and put them away. I was leaning against the counter next to where she was neatly stacking everything, telling her what just happened, when suddenly I instinctively flinched and went to grab all the pots and pans. My mom just looked at me like I was crazy and said, "What are you doing?" I looked at the pile that was still sitting on the counter and explained I thought they were falling. I continued my story, and a few seconds later all the pots and pans on the counter toppled just like I thought they were going to do seconds earlier, and then crashed to the floor. Later that day, I was watching TV when, for some reason, I thought my dad was home. He got home at the same time every day, and it was hours before he was supposed to be home. I was in a room where I couldn't see anyone coming up the driveway, and I hadn't heard anything. I just suddenly thought Dad was home. I got up, walked over to the door, and opened it to see my dad walking up to the house. He had left early because the snow was getting worse. Nothing else unusual happened the rest of the day, but over the years I've thought of that psychic day often. Maybe I should have played the lottery that day looking back. Case notes for file 10,027, the glitchiest snow day ever. So maybe this is in part why I love snow so much now, is back in the day in middle school and 1 year of high school, because I was homeschooled after that, I would have snow days, and they were infrequent. Maybe I had 5 in my life, something like that, because I was living in Quebec, Montreal, or outskirts of Montreal, the suburbs areas. Not exactly a place that's unaccustomed to snow, so they had entire fleets of snow plows and salters and everything, so it was rare there was so much snow that school was canceled. But in the days that they were, it was so cool. The best days of my life. If you've never experienced a snow day, you wouldn't know. But yeah, they're good. If they're unexpected, especially. And it's like those memes where, your parents had to go to school by walking 30 miles through a blizzard while also being in a desert snowstorm, in a sandstorm and a heat wave. And, they were walking through space. And they had a hard life, right? We didn't have to do that. If it was snowy enough, we just stayed home, which was pretty cool. Now to the glitch, I think it all starts with the dream state. We don't fully understand why we dream. I mean, we understand some mechanisms. We repair our bodies more when we're asleep. Physical repair, but also mental organization. It's like thinking of an old school magnetic disk hard drive, where there's a need to defragment it to organize and partition things more closely. And also the brain clears out short-term memories that are thought to not be needed. So there's a lot going on in your mind, and your mind is more active when you're sleeping than when you're awake. Most people think it's the other way, but it's not. So perhaps there were synapses that were arranged in such a configuration while you were sleeping that enabled you to decode the buffered reality, the information of the future that already happened, the choices you already made and were living through again, and you just grabbed that information and your brain was able to process it in terms of more of an emotion instinct to know what's going to happen, like with the dishes. It's not really a thought, like a vision of what was going to happen. You just knew, and you reacted in that way because of that. I think that's pretty cool. I think there's a lot to learn about dreams and what our minds are capable of. I think there's so much information around us that we don't have access to. Not entirely. And because of that, sometimes in dream states, we're able to unlock more. It seems like it only lasted for a day, though. I wonder, maybe when you went to bed the following night, the brain reset back to normal. Case file number 10,028, written by Mars for Rez, playing in the universe's Rubble. General characteristics. Observation date, 1988. Time, not specified. Contact information, not specified. Writing date, March 29th, 2022. Observation. It was in the late afternoon. I was in a house secluded in the heights of St. Joseph. The exact location is not given for anonymity reasons, part of which was under renovation. My husband was a mason, and he had several construction sites. When he could, on weekends, he worked on the house to make progress on the work he was able to. There was concrete rubble with sometimes sharp iron rods and pieces of sharp metal in a corner of the courtyard. For now, it's a detail, but it will be important later. Anyway, I was with my 4-year-old child, and my husband was about to come home from work. I was doing my household chores inside, and my child was playing in the large room. Then I heard my husband's car driving on the dirt road to get to us. My son also heard it, and as usual, he ran out shouting, "Dad!" He went out through the door and went to wait for his father in front of the house on the concrete driveway. It should be noted that that afternoon, the weather was cloudy and gray. A few seconds after my son went out to wait for his father outside, it started to rain, and so I also ran out to both pick up my laundry and tell my child to come inside. Once in front of my clotheslines, and after picking up a few, I looked to my left to see if my son was at the end of the concrete driveway, but he was not. Suddenly, I heard the sound of stones and metal rubbing on my right. I turned my head and I saw my son playing in the rubble. I shouted his name, promising to spank him if he didn't get out immediately, because yes, the rubble was on my right. He was sitting and crouching in it, his back to me, and he was ignoring my shout, which was nevertheless powerful. Once the laundry was picked up in a few seconds, I issued a final ultimatum to my son, but still nothing, still ignoring me. So I quickly went inside to drop off the laundry basket so I could go back out and retrieve my child from this dangerous pile of rubble. But when I got inside, I almost had a heart attack. My husband was there with our child in his arms, having entered through the back door. In total panic, I still hurriedly dropped off the laundry basket and went back out to see who was in the rubble. And once outside, no one was there. I went back inside and asked my husband where he had taken our child. Of course, this question was absurd because he couldn't have taken the child into the rubble, gone around the house, and come back in through the back door in such a short time. I would have seen him anyway. But my Cartesian mind couldn't believe otherwise, so I insisted on him answering that question. But his answer was striking. He told me he had picked up our child at the end of the driveway. They had gone into the car together, and he had driven slowly to the back of the house to take a short ride with his son because he loved it. It was true that I had forgotten that it was our son's habit, that every time his father came home, he asked him to take a ride in the car. So when I went out to pick up my laundry and didn't see him at the end of the concrete driveway, it meant that he was already in the car with his father, slowly driving to the backyard. But that's when I saw a child in the rubble who vanished in 5 to 10 seconds, the time it took to put down the basket. Now, a few important points to clarify. It couldn't have been a neighbor's child. The closest neighbor was a kilometer away because in 1988 we lived on several hectares of agricultural land. There were very few houses then, unlike now, where house constructions are common. Also, the child I saw looked like my son in every way, but in the rubble, he was wearing a red t-shirt, whereas in fact all day that day, he was wearing a yellow t-shirt, but at the time I didn't realize it. With the stress of seeing what I thought was my child in dangerous rubble and rushing to pick up my laundry in the rain, everything happened in almost 2 minutes. Was it a ghost? I don't know. All I can tell you is that it looked real as you and me. Case notes for file 10,028. Playing in the universe's rubble. So generally, if we're talking about astral projection, the person that is projecting their soul out, their soul isn't naked. They appear to be clothed, and usually they're wearing whatever the person is wearing at the time of astral projection. So if you mention that the kid you saw looked just like yours, but was wearing red instead of yellow, as he physically was when you saw him again later on, and then your brain was able to process that difference because in the moment everything happened so quickly. So he was wearing a different shirt. So to me, I don't think it was astral projection. I think it probably was more multiversal peering. You were just seeing into another universe where your son in that universe was playing in the rubble. And maybe you were preoccupied with something else and he was just being a sneaky boy, doing boy things, which is just taking unnecessary risks. That's what we do. And it's fun, as long as we don't actually get hurt. I know I climbed so many trees, really, really big trees to the tippy top where it was so thin that the branch was moving. And some branches broke and I fell down, and I was a small kid, so I never really hurt myself. I mean, just a few things. I broke my middle finger. That was an accident in a door. But outside of that, just, scrapes and bruises and stuff like that on my bike going down hills. All the good stuff. But yeah, boys will be boys. We will take risks because it's fun. It's got to explore the world, right? Or in this case, the courtyard, because it's not explored yet. There's something new there. Maybe treasure mixed in with the rubble. And now time for the quote of the day. Your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear what you say. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Oh yeah, another Emerson quote. Seems to have a pretty good mind on his shoulders, at least for some snippets. This one thing I always find fascinating is no matter who the person is, even if they're like actual evil or just someone you disagree with, they're probably going to have some nuggets of wisdom that you can embody and work with. It's worth listening to everyone. You never know what they'll say. I mean, our actions are us. All the machinations going on inside our brains are the trials and errors that are going on in our mind trying to determine who are we going to be in the next choice that we make. And that's what really matters. Our intent matters, but ultimately actions are what speak for us. We are our actions, our choices, our imprint on the universe and on other people. Maybe you're not bad, but you're not doing anything good either. You can be neutral, I guess, but might as well strive to be good too. Like the video, subscribe. Kinetic Symphony signing off.